everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Meat Cake number 9 by Dame Darcy, but with a helping hand by Alan Moore. This is a very curious comic. I didn't even hear about this coming out, and I think I found it in a dollar bin. And, you know, I collect almost everything Alan Moore's ever done. And I was like, what the hell? So it was kind of weird. When you read the story, though, it kind of makes sense. It's a good fit. But Dame Darcy, she's been doing alternative comics since the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s. And this came out in 1999. So all throughout the 90s, she was making this comic Meat Cake for Fantagraphics. And she's just a very iconoclastic creator. Maybe that's the wrong word. She's very unique, as we shall see. Painted cover. Looks like she hasn't really gotten the art of painting down, because she usually draws in black and white, as we shall see. This inside front cover is wishes to come. And she's just writing all these things she wishes for. I wish to be understood. I wish to age gracefully. And there's this guy from history. He's like King Ludwig Friedrich Wilhelm II of Bavaria. She has a crush on him. I don't know if he was really this pretty in real life. But that's part of her wishes, that she live with him in his castle. I like her art style. It's just so different than anyone else's. I mean, there's definitely hints of like gory, and I'm trying to think of who else. I don't know. She's very unique. But let's get to the main story here. Hungry is the Heart. Story by Alan Moore. Illustrations Dame Darcy. This is a really fun story. I guess one rainy night, this young woman with a strangely flat atonal cough drops off her baby at this strange outgrowth of rock known as the Devil's Hat Rack. She basically abandons her baby in the middle of the forest here. The baby's found by this guy, Ben Woolenboy, a simple-minded button prospector. So he was out in the woods sifting for collar buttons in the puddles, or sieving, I should say. He names her Wellington after a beloved spaniel recently killed by a meteorite. On Wellington's 9th birthday, she hears screaming from the marshes. I guess Ben has found this legendary giant button, the Fluxberry button. But he suffers a heart attack from excitement. As he dies, he tells her of her origins, of how he found her. So she strays out into the marshes, where she meets a gang of stilt waifs. These kids who live out in the marshes on stilts. She has a lot of adventures with them, and then they take her to London. As a parting gift, they give her a sweet wax whistle. So she's in London, and it's a bad part of town. It's so destitute, this neighborhood, that even the local pets have been forced into prostitution. You see these cute cats all dolled up. She gets a job at a steam factory, but pisses off some of her co-workers. It turns out they're actually a clique of Turkish anarchists who are secretly undermining the British steam industry. So they're afraid that she's onto them. So they kidnap her and chloroform her and throw her on a barge headed for the Ivory Coast. The ship hits a mine, and luckily there's these giant balls of string that are very buoyant on the ship. So she holds on, and she's washed up on the coastline of Congolese Belgium. Apparently there's a little Congolese colony in Belgium, and they worship her as a goddess there. She marries, she takes many husbands, But then she's lured back to civilization by a circus. And she becomes part of this woman tamer act. And I guess this guy, the climax of every show, sticks his head in a woman's mouth. Inevitably, something bad happens. So these three women are going to be destroyed, basically, because they've got the taste of human flesh. They've gone rogue. But luckily, this marquis relocates them to his safari park. So they can just wander around as if it's like great adventure. But then she remembers that she has that sweet wax whistle, and she blows it. And the stilt waifs, who are all grown up now, come and rescue her and her two circus friends. She ends up getting this roofing job. And one night it rains really hard and she falls through the roof. And it turns out to be the offices of the Button Company. It's the brother of Ben, the guy who discovered her when she was a baby. I guess he's the total opposite of Ben. He's black-hearted. His name's Darby Willenboy. He's the owner of the buttonry that had thrived on his older brother's impoverished toil. So he doesn't want her like making some claims against his money, so he tricks her into marrying him. I don't know how he would do that, but he does. It's a very unhappy marriage for her. He has all these crazy friends, and he has these tastes for some. He actually censors it. Her husband has a taste for blank and blank. His show business acquaintance is often blank or blank. So one night she's a little drunk and she can't stand it anymore, and she shoots her husband. She's taken to jail, but then all of a sudden she gets a royal pardon. It turns out her benefactress is the elderly Duchess of Fluxbury. There's still a trial, I guess, and they all agree that it was self-defense, and that, in fact, she owns the buttonry. So here we see that giant button that Ben found at the beginning of the story. She puts that over her mansion gate, and she calls for all of her husbands from the Congolese Belgian colony, and has a nice life. Has all these children by her various husbands. One day, the Duchess of Fluxbury's carriage stops outside, but drives away when Wellington approaches. A strangely flat, atonal cough is heard. Aha. See that, Alan Moore? He ties everything together. And then when she's an old lady one day, she's strolling near the Devil's Hat stand where she was found. And she's killed by a meteorite, just like the Cocker Spaniel that she was named after. Oh, what a delightful story. Just wonderful. And it's just like such a perfect marriage of story and art. Like Dame Darcy's Victorian looking, Edward Gorey type art. It just fits so perfectly. That's a really great Alan Moore story. So I think this is what Meat Cake is normally like. There's these two young ladies who are pals. One of them is called Friend the Girl, the one with short dark hair. I never caught her name. I don't know who this is, but they get into various hijinks. So I think Meat Cake is usually their regular characters. This one they're fishing, and this wolf-headed guy steals all their fish. And they're like, it took us a long time to catch that many fish. Well, now you have to catch them again. Ha! Here we have a little pin-up dress delirium. So we see those two characters again. And I just love these stories. They're just like anything can happen in them. It's almost like that Alan Moore story. I think that's maybe why he wrote a story for her. He recognized a kindred spirit. So they're just sitting having tea, and all of a sudden a knife crashes through the window with a piece of paper on it, a note. And it just says, "Hate you," in dripping letters. And they just forget about it. And it has nothing to do with the rest of the story. So they're getting ready for a party, and they have these crazy old-timey dresses that they have. And they're reminiscing to last Wednesday at the graveyard. So I guess they went to the graveyard and robbed these graves because they have a yen for like old-timey fashion. So they figure, we'll dig up these graves from women who died in like the 18th century and steal their dresses, their beautiful old-timey dresses. They douse themselves with perfume to get rid of the rancid stench, because these dresses have been on these molding corpses for a couple centuries. They go to the party, and they're the belles of the ball. But all of a sudden, they start feeling bad. They're feeling itchy, and there's worms in the dresses. So they run from the party. And then the two corpses show off who had their dresses stolen. I like how this one's wearing a barrel. And they just basically ruin the party. They're like, where are our dresses? So they find the house of these two women. And the blonde one is having horrible nightmares of worms eating her. And when she wakes up, she sees the corpse lady. And she says, "You will hear and obey." Then I guess she goes back to sleep, because the next morning she wakes up and her friend's not in bed. She always sleeps till noon. And she goes down to the kitchen, and she's on the kitchen table with this like quilt, and all these knives are stabbed in, holding it down. I don't know if she did this intentionally, but she looks totally two-dimensional here, as if she's as flat as a board. I don't know if that's just a mistake. And she just says, "What's the idea of putting holes in our new antique table?" And meanwhile, back at the graveyard, the women have their dresses back. Here's some other crazy Dame Darcy characters. These guys were in the party scene from the last story. This mermaid lady and her two-headed friends, Hindrance, Perfidia, and Effluvia. They got great names. This is so weird. They go to the stand where they know the person who works there, so they want free food. And this waitress woman, or whatever, the owner of the stand, has this board like crammed in her neck. There's even blood coming down. And that's how she communicates. Like words appear on it, almost like the Yellow Kid's nightshirt. Grill, warm. So odd. I never really read Dame Darcy before this. For some reason, I stupidly thought I wouldn't like her. I don't know, her art seemed kind of wispy to me and kind of sloppy. And it is. It is kind of sloppy art. But not just the Alan Moore story. Every story in here, I'm like, fuck, I gotta buy all these. I gotta track these down. This next story is Sweet William and Lady Margaret. And this is a ballad. She's illustrating an English ballad from like the 1600s. And this is kind of one of those sad romantic ballads where this guy, his true love, Lady Margaret, I guess it's just he thinks she doesn't love him. It sounds like miscommunication, because he's going to marry this woman, another woman. And he's kind of saying, she'll see my bride. Probably hoping she gets jealous or something. And when she sees that he's married, she steps out of her door, never to return anymore. And the ghost of her comes to his wedding bed, and she asks him, how are you enjoying your new bride. And William is not having a good time. He's miserable. Has these horrible nightmares. I love this drawing. It's crazy. He has a dream that his hall was filled with wild swine and my true love was swimming in blood. And it's not his wife, it's Lady Margaret. So he goes to see Lady Margaret. He doesn't know she's dead. He just thought that was a nightmare where he saw her apparition. Her brother answers the door, Lady Margaret's brother, I should say. And he says, she's in the coffin next to the wall. And he says, may I see her for one last time? May I kiss her cold lips? He kisses her cheek and her chin. And when he kisses her cold clay lips, his heart is crushed. And so Lady Margaret is buried by the cathedral, the church, and so is Sweet William. And out of her coffin sprung red rose, and out of his a briar. They grew and grew to the steeple top. They could not grow no higher. They wound up and tied in a true lover's knot for all young people to admire. The present, your future. I don't quite understand this little pinup. But that's the thing, Dame Darcy is like when you don't understand it, it's like this delicious quandary. Here's those two characters again. And they find a cat just gave birth and she's eating the placenta. Here's a letter page. I like how it's all handwritten in her scripty font. Fonty script. And she has ads for all kinds of crazy stuff. Dame Darcy is kind of jack of all trades. So she's a doll maker. She's a palm reader. You can do it through the mail. She's like, send me a clear Xerox of your palm and I'll give you a palm reading. Selling original art. I guess she has this TV show on cable access in New York City, or she had one, a variety show, and you could buy videotapes of it. She's in a film, and this guy's selling the film on VHS. And she's in a band that has selling their record. The Blackstrap Molasses Family. Talking about her website, which is new. Seems like a really interesting person. And here we have a nice painted back cover. I kind of like this one. I like the primarily green and then pink and then little touches of pink here. Just so quizzical, her stuff. She definitely walks to the beat of a different drum, this Dame Darcy. So there you have it. Meat Cake number 9. I want to get all the issues now. I bought this a while ago just for the Alan Moore story and thought that's all I liked about it. But reading the rest of it, reading it again, I'm just like, no, this is all good. Dame Darcy is a really fun storyteller. She's just crazy. But of course, the Alan Moore story, this is fucking amazing. So you got to buy this if you see it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely did. And I hope to see you here next time at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.